Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Lioness community event. My name is Bobby Carlton. I'm the founder of Innovation Women and also the editor in chief and publisher of Lioness magazine. And today we are here with Dr. Joy Wiggins. But before we get on to today's presentation, just a few little housekeeping items. Let's pop over to that next slide and just want to get everybody on board with our February Lioness Networking. What we're going to be talking about is bouncing back from rejection. If you are a woman entrepreneur, you probably get to deal with your fair amount or your unfair amount of rejection. And we're going to talk about how you bounce back on that. So the link to that session is in the chat. That is going to be Tuesday, February 24th from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern. So next slide. And again, welcome to Lioness Magazine. We are a community of women entrepreneurs. And if you are interested in getting more involved, you might want to check out our Lioness Premium membership. Again, that link is in the chat. It gives you a chance to get involved with a lot of extra activities and also access to a lot of our resources, including our women owned business directory, Lioness features, and also some great resources. So, lots of terrific tools and exclusive events for you. Next slide. All right. We are moving on. So, welcome to Dr. Joy Wiggins for today. She is our featured presenter. She is Joy L. Wiggins, PhD. She is an author, a TEDx speaker, scholar dedicated to advocating for justice through compassionate dialogue, aiming to foster equitable and transformative business practices. She brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to her role as the founder and global CEO of Joy Wiggins, PhD, Equity and Inclusion Consulting. Joy, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to basically turn things over to you, and I will definitely be here in the background monitoring those questions. Folks, if you have any questions during the presentation, drop those into the Q&A for us. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Bobby. I just want to give a shout out to Bobby because Bobby is amazing. Talk about women supporting women. Bobby is one of those people. She's a total model for that. So thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. Just a quick little note. I was just telling everyone before that my cat keeps coming over. So if you see me moving, it's because she can't stand it if I'm on Zoom and not talking to her. So today's presentation is called What's in Your Lifeboat? Moving from Scarcity to Abundance and Surviving Dark Times. So maybe this is resonating with some of you. I'm going to skip over this slide because Bobby already introduced me. And so I wanted to open this up with a quick question for everyone. How many of you have seen that movie Life of Pi? And you might have heard about that movie where the lion, it's not a lion, sorry, it's a tiger in a lifeboat. And it's after this huge shipwreck, like the ship went down with all these zoo animals on it. And it was only the surviving son of the zoo owner and this tiger at the end. And so it kind of gave me this whole inspiration. So I wanted to find out how your lifeboat is looking today. Is it steady? You're rowing with directions. Maybe you have a few leaks. It's taking on water, barely staying afloat. There's too many passengers. There's no space to breathe. Or there's a tiger next to me and I'm just trying to survive. So as you put your answers into the poll, I'm going to keep moving, but maybe you feel like this woman in the picture here. Just if you're a woman entrepreneur, I feel like this picture really kind of captures what it's like. So, okay, I'm going to keep moving. Yeah, definitely. I see somebody saying that they want to watch the movie, but if you're an animal lover, it can be hard. So what does this look like to have scarcity and dark waters? And so there's lots of things happening in the world right now. And why does scarcity seem to be intensifying for women in this moment? I think it ebbs and flows, right? Throughout time and history, women, we've always faced challenges, that is for sure. Sometimes we feel them a little bit more than other times, and sometimes it depends on where you are in the world. And right now, there's a lot of things happening for me as an American woman, but for the women of Iran, for women all over the world, in different areas and in different situations, there's always a struggle. So there's this idea of political attacks and shrinking protections. Then there's also emotional and physical labor of the household. There's financial stress, inflation, job market uncertainty. If some of you are entrepreneurs because you actually are, it's hard to find a job, and maybe you thought, okay, well, I'm just going to have to do an entrepreneur. I'm going to have to start my own business. Or as entrepreneurs, it's really difficult right now. Sometimes it's the overload of social media and doom scrolling, also comparing yourself to others while you're doom scrolling. And then even cultural survival for marginalized communities. So, many people right now are in different countries feeling different challenges and political upheaval. So I really want to kind of acknowledge that and send my thoughts to those folks. And if we could all just do that, to send, there's multiple things happening all over the world. So all of these things can compound over time, can compound to that lifeboat feeling like it's just, there's holes everywhere, there's leaks, there's all kinds of things that we have to patch up. So today, what we'll talk about is some of the ways that scarcity mindset can make things a little bit worse for you. How can you change your own mindset? Still acknowledging that there are all of these things happening. We don't want to ignore them, but we also know that we have to somehow think of, you know, what do I do with all this? I'm looking at the poll, and it looks like a lot of you steady. There's a few leaks, but they're managing. Not too many people have too many passengers on the boat. I don't see anybody with that, but so that's good to know. So, oops, the next one is so signs of scarcity. So ways in which we start to feel like, oh, I'm feeling like my nervous system is kind of wrecked right now. It's frazzled nervous system, inability to focus, depression, anger, irritation, like having PMS all the time, sometimes having brain fog. And many times when we're asked to make decisions and we are working from that scarcity mindset or fear, we're not able to make really good informed decisions. We tend to make a decision out of just fear or desperation or something like that. And we're not able to really think through all the ramifications of those decisions that we're asked to make, especially during times of change or when there's maybe a tragedy happening. So some of the beliefs that can also clutter our boat is trying to maintain an old mask. I love this idea because I don't know if for you all, like some of these signs of scarcity are also for people like me, just menopause or perimenopause or just PMS or just signs of the time. Um, but the other thing that I think is really interesting is that when we are masking something for so long, maybe we're going into the workplace and we feel like we have to keep this mask up. As you age and as you start to have some of these scarcity feelings and experiences, that mask starts to slip and it's harder and harder to keep it up. It's harder and harder for us to like keep that mask on and to breathe through it and to show up and perform. And so one of the things that can really clutter that boat is trying to keep that mask on as well, especially when we are looking at social media. And the other thing is holding on to old stories of who we are supposed to be or what we should be doing. I recently did a podcast where we were talking about taking risks. And I said one of the reasons why I didn't want to take a risk was because of my ego, and that my ego was getting in the way because of what I thought I should be doing or what I've done in the past, and how I can't do that now because that's a totally different joy. And I have to keep going along the path that I decided 20 years ago. And I think, oh, this is what that I should be doing, I'm supposed to be doing. So All of these things are part of this like scarcity mindset, and they're real, and they're also, they need to be acknowledged. And so if you're feeling this way, you're validated in that. So scarcity also is survival. And the reason why I also have all of these in text, so in case you want to take a screenshot or something like that, I'm also happy to share these things, as well. But scarcity is a survival response to uncertainty. It shows up when we're replaceable, we're feeling overextended, maybe we feel responsible for everything, but we actually have very little control of what we're able to actually do. And then scarcity, women will say yes to protect relevance. Entrepreneurs, I think, definitely do this. As speakers, too, we might go and say yes to something that wasn't really probably the most strategic way of getting our names and our word out there and our thought leadership out there. Sometimes we'll do unpaid or invisible labor to prove our worth when actually we should probably, not do that anymore. Maybe we're past that point of doing all the freebies. And when you do a freebie, make sure that it's really strategic and that you have decision makers in the room. What I tend to tell brand new entrepreneurs, and I'm like, for those of us, for women especially, if we've been speaking for a long time, if you have all these other women coming up behind you doing it for free, it invalidates, or doesn't invalidate completely, but it tends to lower our own credibility, because they're like, oh, well, they can get so and so for free. Whereas men might be going out and speaking all the time for top rates, and women are like, oh, maybe I'll just do this, or I just want to get my name out there, or maybe, and so just be careful of that as well. Sometimes we overfunction instead of choosing strategically. We confuse exhaustion with impact. So we think, oh, I just worked all day long. But at the end of the day, what was the actual impact? What leads did you secure? What business did you actually garner? And so sometimes we think we're doing and doing and doing, but where's it actually going? So scarcity is not, it's not a mindset failure. It's just what happens when the lifeboat feels unstable. Is this resonating with people so far? Yes, 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 yes. Great. Yeah, Brianne, for sure. So abundance is agency under pressure. So let's move from scarcity to abundance. And sometimes when we think about abundance, it's really being able to choose deliberately what we carry. So again, going back to that idea of strategy. And I recently had a friend that did a whole PhD on women and strategy and how are they strategically choosing their path in life, their career path, their personal journeys. How are they being strategic? Sometimes we take what we can get, and it's really important to be as strategic as possible. So protect your capacity so that you can keep rowing that boat. You want to create options before your panic sets in, and support others without self erasure. And one of the things that we talk about in the book, From Sabotage to Support, that's my co author, Camille Anderson, and I talk about how do women support each other without erasing what you're doing. And when you're moving from abundance and you're navigating abundance well, you are supporting other women and not worrying about you're giving them business that you might have had. Actually, there's enough for all of us, right? And if we keep moving with that and navigating the waters of entrepreneurship with that in mind, we know that there's, I mean, one woman talking about this topic that goes perfectly for that organization, or somebody else, is maybe doing healthcare, and that's not what I do. So I'd be like, hey, here's this person. Something else to think about too when you are referring other women is have a little blurb about them so that you know exactly what they talk about. So if you've been networking with other women and you want to support them, have what I do is I have an Excel spreadsheet. And so I just have like the people that I know, and then, or I put it on my notes app, and I have exactly like 2 to 3 sentences of what they do, so that when I do an introduction, I can actually go in and say, here you go, this is what so and so does. You should meet this other person. So things like that. Those are strategically networking. Those are being very strategic about what you're doing. So say yes with intention, align your effort with impact, and set boundaries without guilt. One of the things that I would highly recommend is when you're setting boundaries, the more that you do them, the better you get at it. The more that you practice setting boundaries, the better you get. So keep practicing that and just, think, what if I just set a boundary right now? Let's just try it and see how that works. And people usually will respond well to boundaries. We don't think they will sometimes, but they actually do. So abundance isn't about having everything, it's about having enough clarity and capacity to move forward with that purpose. So sometimes when we have a lifeboat that might feel like it's got a lot of leaks, or maybe there's a couple of leaks, or there's something that looks like it might be a leak soon, there's 3 survival buckets that we might look at. The first one is looking at our resources bucket. What income and stability do we have currently? What's keeping that boat afloat? Do we have a primary income and then maybe some backup streams? So as we know, as entrepreneurs, you're supposed to have multiple revenues of income, right? So for me in particular, I have my main business, my main speaking business and consulting, but I also do coaching. I also run another part of my business called Joy Abroad, where I help women move abroad. So not only do I do strategic consulting with organizations around organizational development and cross-cultural communication, but then I also do a lot of speaking and keynote speaking and workshops kind of like this for organizations. And that's all around either women supporting women or cross-cultural communication. And then I thought, I've lived in Portugal now for a year and a half. I've lived in Germany and China. I can actually help women move abroad. So why don't I do that? So then I launched another thing. It's called Joy Abroad. And then I do Airbnb experiences where I actually sit down and have some pastel de nata, if anybody is familiar with Portuguese cuisine. And we go down and talk about expat life and what's it really like to live in Lisbon, Portugal. So there's so many different things that we can do. So that's really important to think about, how am I managing all my resources and it still has a through line to my business. So for me, because I talk about cross-cultural communication, that makes sense to do Joy Abroad. So networks that lead to paid opportunities. So I will say that sometimes when we do women networking events, make sure that you go in there and you actually have some people that you want to meet and what you want to talk about. And be careful that it's an organic conversation and not you going in and self-promoting and being super self-promoty. Like it needs to be authentic and organic. But also ask women, how can I help you? And it's great when there's another woman that you've met at a networking event, she's in a decision-making room somewhere, and she's floating your name to event organizers, or you hear there's a budget somewhere, and you're like, hey, actually I know a great speaker for that, or I know somebody that you'd really like to, work with. So yeah, so all of those things. So kind of knowing also where your money comes before panic sets in. So scarcity mindset would be fear, urgency, and desperation, and an abundance mindset is options, flexibility, and choice. So now the number 2 bucket is your sustainability bucket. This is your capacity and your self-care. So making sure, that we all hear that metaphor of putting the oxygen mask on before anybody else, before your child. And that's hard for us to do if you're a mom. But keeping yourself upright enough to row. So as you're rowing, you can't be falling all over the place. You have to be able to row. So sleep, nutrition, movement, your emotional regulation. Not the other thing too, I would highly suggest. I've definitely been experiencing this myself. Like yesterday, I was like, my nervous system is shot. So I'm just gonna sit down this morning. I'm gonna do another yoga session. I'm just gonna chill. I'm not gonna beat myself up. One of the things that I've been doing lately that I haven't really done in the past is I give myself a little pat on the shoulder and I go, it's okay, Joy. It's all right. And I'll even do this to my face like I'm a child. And I'll just think about little Joy when I was a little girl with the pigtails. And I'm like, oh, little Joy, you're okay. You're okay, little Joy. And so when I start to talk about myself to myself, like, Joy, I'll do that. I'm like, no, 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 it's okay. It's okay. No problem. Or because I have ADHD, I tend to get distracted really easily. I'm like, okay, Joy, no problem. Just let's get back to what you were doing. Let's get back to what you were doing. And so really talking to yourself in a loving way. So it's so important. I mean, I think we really beat ourselves up. One of the things to watch for here is martyrdom and victim narratives. So for me, it could be really easy to get really upset about the direction of diversity, equity, and inclusion. and get really mad about, all of the budgets that have been slashed around DEI, because that's been what I've done for the last 20 years. And instead, and I can be a good victim sometimes, but instead, I'm like, all right, this is just the reality of the situation right now. What else can I do? Let's keep moving forward. And sometimes when we think about that word resilience, you know, resilience can be kind of a funny thing because yeah, it's okay to make sure that we can, bolster ourselves up enough and be able to face adversity. But we also need to understand the systems in place that keep that adversity going all the time. So some of it's our responsibility, and some of it we do understand that there are systems in place that make it harder for women. So, it may not be your fault necessarily. This is my coach says this. It may not be your fault, but it's all your responsibility. So it's all in how you react and how you navigate it. So scarcity might look like burnout and self neglect, but abundance is that sustainability. So, number 3, clarity bucket. This is your direction and strategy. So, this is actually where you're rowing the boat, you're upright, and you know where you're going. You're really strategic about it. So, you have clarity on what matters right now, not necessarily forever, but what matters, what's the next best step? What happens now? How can you make a decision making framework? For me, I've been doing lots of different things. I have pros and cons lists all the time. I have a friend that was trying to decide whether or not she was going to break up with their partner. And so I said, well, why don't you do like what it's like with them there and what it's like without them? And, and just to compare. So I'm a big believer in writing things down, just like from, pen to paper, not necessarily on the computer, and really thinking through what might be getting in your way. And recently I just did something that was called, I just made this up actually. I just put my parents, and I was like, I'm really having some money issues. Like I really need to think about my money stuff and my financial story. Like where is this idea about my experience with money? So I drew a picture of just a stick figure of my mom and my dad, and I wrote down all the messages that my dad gave me about money and what my mom gave me about money. And I started to realize, I'm like, oh, money is something that is scarce, that we don't have a lot of. It doesn't grow on trees. There's all these things that go along with money. I'm like, well, no wonder I feel this way about money. That makes total sense. And so I really wanted to think through all the messages I've gotten in my life about certain things, about love, money, career, women, about other people, what my capacity is for loving others. All of these things can be a very strategic way of you helping you have a decision-making framework. And so you have values that guide these trade-offs too, right? So ability to say no without over-explaining. Sometimes when we say no, we're like, well, it's because da 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 da. All you have to do is just say no. No, thank you. I'm good. Or, I have something else to do, or I'm in line with my, if it's a price, let's say, I recently had somebody give me a really low price on a webinar, and I was like, yeah, thank you so much. That's below my price, my typical rates of what I'm allowed, what I can do. But if you have, bigger opportunities for leadership and organizational development, I'd be happy to talk to you. So all of these things can be a part of your direction and your strategy. So really thinking about where you want to be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, having that vision board, whatever it is that you need to help you get super strategic about what you're doing. And all of these things will help you with that lifeboat. So what I'd love to do is to open this up now to all of you. And what's in your lifeboat right now? So what's taking up the most space in your lifeboat now? And then where do you feel you have the biggest leak? And then what are you carrying that may not be yours to carry anymore? I think those are really important questions. That third one, what are you carrying that may not be yours to carry anymore? You've been carrying something for a while, you keep thinking it's your responsibility, maybe it's not. So I'm just going to look at the chat and see what people are saying. Yeah, the weather's not helpful. It has been raining in Lisbon for 2 weeks straight. Like I haven't left. And it's really annoying. And every time I wake up in the morning and I look up and I'm like, oh, it's the sun. I'm gonna get out. And then it starts raining. I'm like, oh my gosh. Good. I'm glad this is helpful. Yeah, all the to-dos. The something I do with to-dos is I put just down 3 to-dos that I have to do that are the most important, and I try to prioritize them. This is especially helpful for the neurodivergence of the group or when you're experiencing overwhelm to really think through, okay, what are the top 3 things I have to do? And then I also separate things into categories, like what is the social media stuff, my marketing stuff, and then what are like client stuff. And then I will prioritize my client list, and then I'll prioritize my social media stuff. I put out a newsletter on LinkedIn, and it's a big newsletter. It's really too big, but I just feel like people can scroll and go to the sections they want to. And then I've started to just do LinkedIn posts, and so I thought, okay, that's a little bit more manageable for me to do. Um, yeah, getting good sleep is so important. Um, the expectations that I should be farther along my bit. Oh my gosh. So the expectations that you should be further along than you are. You are where you are. So, and I think that that is one thing where we can beat ourselves up about where our businesses are. And it might be good to take a day and just to walk away from the business for a little bit, because sometimes that helps recalibrate us a little bit. And and also when you walk away, sometimes you come back and your email has just been flooded. It's like watching a boiling, watching water boil, right? A boiling pot. And like if you're watching it, it's kind of like watching your email or watching your LinkedIn to see if clients are coming in or how your business is doing. And but if you walk away for a few hours even, it can really, really help to come back and you're like, all right, some things have happened while I've been away. Yeah, volunteer obligations, due dates. I'm looking at Rebecca. Bobby talks about the weather. Your warmest socks. Bobby, I do my warmest sweatpants because I'm wearing sweatpants underneath this right now. I top up is fine, bottom down is sweatpants and slippers. So let's see, what else do y'all have? I'm trying to stick with my workout routine. Yeah. Yep, yep, yep. I'm trying to exercise, trying to designate responsibility. Yeah. Sometimes if you let things go, you can practice letting little things go and then see how you feel. And then practice letting a bigger thing go, see how you feel. So you don't have to like drop something huge all at once. Um, yeah. Yes. To have joy when you walk away. That's hard. Finances, struggling to get bookings. Oh, Alexia, yes. I feel you on that one. I've had a pretty negative mindset from frustration not getting bookings. I think that's causing the biggest leak. So, the thing with the mindset is, and I know most of y'all know this already, but waking up and having gratitude and doing your gratitude mindset, not waking up and looking at your phone. You don't, it's so important the minute that we wake up to not like jolt out of bed, to sit there for a few moments, have those gratitude check-ins, just like I told my daughter when she was in daycare, when she was little. I'm like, today you get to have a choice of how you want to tackle your day. Do you want to go at it with positivity or you want to go out with negativity? There's always going to be something that's going to rock your lifeboat. There's always going to be somebody over there being themselves or doing something to frustrate you. But it's up to you on how you react to it. So, yeah. And then somebody said, I'm not, what was that? I'm not in 9 to 5 like my friends. I just graduated college and income isn't as steady as some people around me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the thing is that you're going to see people all the time doing paths that you think that you should be doing, but your path is your own. And I mean, my goodness, so when I graduated with my master's, I couldn't find a teaching job. So I was walking into one of the buildings of my university that I never walk into typically, and there was a sign that said "Teach in China," and I was like, Psh, and I pulled it off. I was like, well, I guess I'm going to China, and that was the scariest, one of the scariest things I've ever done, and it was one of the riskiest things. But for me, it absolutely was the best thing I could have done for my career. I ended up getting into a PhD program, and my GRE scores were horrible, and they were like, so tell us about your GRE scores. I was like, well, I was already in another grad school, or, I had some excuse for it. But they was like, but we were really interested in your China experience. And everybody thought I was crazy for going. This was in the year 2000, and China hadn't really been open for super long. And I'm telling you that sometimes that biggest risk that you're going to take is the thing that opens doors for years to come. So you just never know. And then if you fail and it messes up and you don't like it, okay, so what? It's okay. So it's really important just to take those risks, to know that if you're gonna fail, okay, you failed. And I've heard this over many times that venture capitalists and investors, they will not invest in a business until they've seen that that founder has failed at least once or twice. And that's so true. And I even went to a business school panel where it was, in the beginning, it was the founders, and they all talked about their failures and all the things that went completely wrong. And then they had the next set of panelists come in, and it was all the investors saying why that was so inspiring to hear these founders fail and why that was so important. So, yeah, I try to remember each day is a new day. Yeah. Same, Alexia, I joined a bunch of book clubs. Yes. Oh, and also do micro learning. I'm learning chess right now. Instead of scrolling on social media and comparing yourselves to everybody else and thinking, oh my gosh, they just got another award, or they just got another thing, or they just got this, remove yourself from that, because you don't really know actually what's happening to those folks behind you. Or behind the screen, you have no idea what's really going. The let them theory, yes, very good. um yep. Okay, so oh my gosh, chess is amazing. Like, I'm really bad at it, and I go to chess.com. Somebody just said about chess. The Queen's Gambit is amazing. But yeah, if you go to chess.com, Duolingo also has chess. So these are all just great things to think about. Okay, so I'm going to keep watching the chat. And then, so when we think about what scarcity does, it no longer runs the boat, right? And so when we think about how important it is for scarcity to like, there's a great, I do some tarot cards sometimes, and there's a great card that I think it's like the Four of Cups, and the picture is a woman that's crying over three spilled cups in front of her, and she's crying about it, and she's just like has her face buried, and then behind her is one full cup, and she doesn't realize that that's that full cup behind her. And so she's just so busy crying over the three spilled cups that there's one nice full cup behind her. So if we can kind of think of it that way too, when we get so tunnel vision on all the problems and all the things that are not happening, how do we just know that there's actually probably something behind us that we're not even looking at yet? So I want to show you all The Life of Pi. So if you haven't seen The Life of Pi, it's a really good book, and it's also a great movie. And this is one of the clips. And so I want you to kind of think about, and put this in the chat as well. Like, think about, okay, what is this like when my own lifeboat feels like there's all these holes in it? There's some stuff that's maybe not going my way, but how do we switch that to abundance? Well, let me see if you all can, I think you can hear it. So these two are basically starving. So sorry if you couldn't hear that, but you can maybe just get the gist of it. Yeah, so the problem with that, right, is that sometimes we don't always realize that we're so busy looking at the scarcity that we don't realize here comes, if we just look up, and even when something hits us in the face, when those fish hit them in the face, even if we look up, you never know. It could be a whole bunch of clients coming your way. It could be a whole bunch of bookings. It could be a whole bunch of stuff coming. And sometimes it comes, as we know as entrepreneurs, sometimes it comes in waves, and sometimes it's feast or famine. And but what I liked about that was that, he stood up to the tiger and he was like, no, this is mine. And so sometimes you have to do that for yourself. You have to just think, and sometimes we have our own internal tiger where it's the tiger that it's within us saying you can't do that, or it's, things are horrible, or things aren't working, or the world is terrible right now. And you can hold these two things at once. You can understand that, yeah, there's maybe some scarcity in the world right now. Inflation's up, we have all these things happening. Housing, our security is being challenged right now. But how do we also at the same time hold that there's abundance as well? And there are things that are within our control. There are things that are ours to take responsibility for and to react in the ways that we want to, that gives us autonomy, that gives us agency. And so it's kind of making peace with what once terrified you, and then looking at how abundance is creating the container. And so that these three buckets, going back to the three buckets, the resources, the capacity and self-care, and the direction and strategy. These are the things that are going to help you with your buckets, and they'll help you, navigate that boat. And yeah. Okay, so I think we have plenty of time actually. I wanted to see if there was some other questions. Hi,
Hello
Bonnie.
there. I'm back to help
Hi.
facilitate that.
Great.
And folks, if and I know the chat's been kind of busy, so if you have particular questions, if you could use that Q&A function, that helps us tremendously. So what it does is it actually moves us into the ability to go and grab those questions. We do have a couple of questions that came in during the conversation. So, Joy, one of the questions we have is, what are the signs that I'm in survival mode before I totally burn out?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we as women do a lot is that we don't pay attention to our nervous system enough. And so when we start to get irritated with other people, or we start to just feel off, and of course that varies for a variety of reasons why we might feel that way. I mean, all kinds of reasons why we might feel that way. But no matter what's happening, it's good to check in with yourself constantly. And so even in the morning, part of that morning mindset, I used to have this whole like 2 hour ritual. I can't really afford to do that anymore. But when I felt really, really bad, and things were really, low, I would take that time to have that self-care ritual. So that meant that I was, and you can get as woo-woo as you want to about this. I had some crystals. I think you and I have talked about this rose technique that my coach told me about, which was basically, she was like, whenever I started to feel horrible, or wasn't feeling like my self-esteem wasn't great, she said, imagine this rose spinning like this, and that all of that angst and all of that anger or sadness or fear or whatever is not serving you, imagine a rose is kind of going around like a carousel. And it's almost like a cotton candy machine where it's just taking all of that stuff and it's going around in a circle, and it's taking all of that fear, and it might look like black smoke or gray smoke or red or whatever color it is. And you're imagining it just coming out of you. And then a little helper comes along. I think of like a Oompa Loompa for some reason, as a little Oompa Loompa comes along and takes it away from you. So that rose is maybe filled with this like cotton candy looking gray smoke stuff around it. And that person takes it. And it might be from your chest, your stomach, your back, your head, wherever. And you might have multiple roses going at once, but that it's taking that those worries away from you. And then you think about, then you have to fill yourself back up. So imagine like a shower head with bright white light that comes down, showers down. It goes all the way to the earth and it pulls up the love from the earth. I know this sounds super woo woo, but it actually works. And it fills you back up. And so imagine that when you take stuff away, you have to fill yourself back up too. You have to fill your bucket back up, just to go back with the lifeboat analogy. So all of those things are, you have to figure out what works for you. And so it might be, yoga, Pilates, maybe it's going out for a run. Definitely exercise is good, just for a walk, anything like that. Getting your body moving, getting vitamin D. All of those different self care techniques are so important. And I think a lot of times we tend to dismiss them or think, I don't have time for that. But it actually could be that game changer, that habit that's a game changer for you.
All right, we've got another great question here. Can we course correct before it's too late? Or is there a point to throw in the towel and just start over entirely? I
Oh,
feel
that's such
that.
a good question. Oh man, how many times have I started over completely? Yeah, there's been times that I'm just like, oh, that didn't work. Just scrap it, not gonna work. Like that's not, and sometimes it takes a lot of strength to let something go. Because sometimes we want to hold on to this thing that we thought would work. And it may not. And maybe it's just the sign of the times, or maybe it just needs to go on a back burner for a little bit. And so you don't necessarily have to just completely throw in the towel, but you can always start to maybe prioritize and switch things around and just think, okay, that's not garnering leads right now. That's not pulling stuff in. And I recently figured this out too with my own work. Like when I left doing diversity, equity, inclusion work, I thought, how do I how do I pivot and how do I look at, well, what's happening right now? And for me, I thought, I have an intercultural communication background. Why don't I take some of the DEI principles that I've been doing for years and apply that to a more global framework? How about I apply that to helping international teams or global teams communicate across differences better? That's what my book was about. That's what Camille Anderson and I, my co-author. That's what we talked about a lot. Um, how do you start to kind of shift when things are not going your way? And instead of just thinking, oh, I give up, how do you shift? And that might mean too that you have to get another side hustle, or maybe that means that you have to go back to working full time so that you can develop that piece of your side hustle a bit more. Or maybe if you've decided you're going to completely leave the workforce and you're going to do that side hustle is now going to be your main hustle, make sure that you have those multiple revenue streams, right? So it's all of these different things that can actually help you pivot, but not necessarily completely give up. And I think sometimes it's a right, wrong, black and white, binary situation where we think if it didn't work, I give up. And that's not necessarily the case.
All right, and you said the word side hustle. That leads me to this next question on the list. Somebody is asking how you build backup income, which sounds to me kind of like side hustle, but I like it. I like backup income without running yourself into the ground.
Yeah. So I'll be real honest with you. What I have done since I was a PhD student was I do dog and house sitting. And it's called Dr. Joy's House Sitting. And it's really just word of mouth. But I mean, it's actually, when I first was a professor, I realized I was like, you know what? I've got to pay off this credit card debt. And I remember thinking, I'm a professor. I shouldn't be having to dog sit. Like, this is crazy. But then I realized, I'm like, I actually really enjoy it. I needed a brain break so I could go out and walk the dogs. I also knew that I probably wasn't going to get outside as much if I didn't do something like that. So I thought I really need nature. I need to get out. And it actually ended up, I took my ex-husband and I to Costa Rica. We went to Italy, all on the dog sitting income. And I thought, hey, don't knock it. And then I got to stay in really nice houses, and I could actually not get distracted by my own house and wanting to clean my own house and procrastinating because I was at somebody else's house, and I could focus better. And so I've actually done some of my best writing and my best work while I was dog sitting. And so, I think we have a tendency to think, oh, well, I shouldn't have to do that, or my ego gets in the way. But really and truly, like the backup hustle could be lots of different things. Maybe it's substitute teaching, maybe it's those things that you don't really want to do, but it could actually turn into something else. I've even had dog clients actually hire me in their companies to do like speaking and workshops and things. And so I think we have a tendency to think that we should only go one path. But again, like having multiple revenue streams is really important. And even selling clothes online. My daughter has a whole Vinted. Here in Europe, it's Vinted. I think there it's called Depop or something. In the US, I think it's called Depop. But she's got two businesses going. She's got Vinted, selling her old clothes, and then also she's has a Ruby's Bake Shop. I think it's called Blue Moon Bakery, and she's doing baking and stuff. And so she's pivoted multiple times. She realized that when she would go into school and have all the cookies to sell, nobody was buying them that way. So then she's like, well, I'm just going to have people order. Well, no, but that wasn't working either. So now she's gone back to the thing that she was doing before. So I think it's just like trying out different things.
Okay. We're back to the conversations about the burnout. We have a couple of related questions, so I'm going to kind of merge them here. Uh, this person says, I built a reputation for being reliable and generous, and now I feel trapped.
Oh,
How do you
no.
change that without blowing things up?
Ah, okay. So you know what you can say. So let's say generous, I'm guessing that you have maybe done some things for free or for lower than you wanted to. So what you can say is, and Bobby, you have great advice about things like this.
I'm
Um,
also bad at this. So let's call it let's call let's be open about that one. This
okay,
could
yeah,
be me.
well, and I do the same thing because I've thought, especially when I moved from the US to Europe, I thought, well, I got to do a bunch of stuff for free. And I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself, 3 months, 6 months, and really I've needed about a year in Europe to not do all free stuff, but to do things at a discounted rate. And now what I do is I just say, hey, listen, I've just so you know, like if somebody comes back to me, I say, hey, just so I've due to inflation or due to whatever, or I'm cultivating a new program, and these are my new rates. And don't apologize for them, because when you apologize or over explain what you've done, you've actually just discounted it. So just go and that's where having those boundaries are really good. Um, and I think the people pleasing aspect of ourselves, we have a tendency to we want to please people. We want to work within their budget. What I do is I just say, this is my typical rate. I'm happy to talk to you about your budget. And so that way, if it's like my rate is way too high, then I can at least still keep the door open by saying, I'm happy to work with your budget. But then we can open the conversation about their budget. So also, if we're too generous with our time, just say, this is what I have capacity for. I can do one, like, let's say if it's at a conference or something, I can do one 20-minute, panel session, or I can do this workshop. I can't do both. Or sometimes you can even say, if you want to kind of garner more business, you can also couple in like, for this price, I can do a workshop, and then I can do maybe one panel presentation or something like that. So be thinking about how you're helping both parties walk away and feel good about the interaction. Both people win. So how do you do that? And do that in a way where you don't feel like you're giving up something.
I'm laughing because this week I had three different conversations that turned into free consulting from Bobby. And all three times it was somebody basically having a conversation about what could be potentially new business for my agency, But at the same time, I literally said, you don't need us. You need to do this. And off you go. And I'm like, is what it is, folks. All right, we've got another question from our audience. How can I work toward moving away from what other people think of me and what my work is? Interesting
Mm.
question.
So, what other people think of me versus what my work is?
And what my work is.
Oh, okay.
And studio audience person, since you are this one was an anonymous one. If you have any clarification on this, I'm thinking it might be people have a preconceived notion of what this person does and what their work is. Perhaps that
Hmm.
might be a clarification.
Yeah. Well, and I think sometimes, well, I'm kind of also thinking about that pivot question too, when things aren't working. Um, it could also just be your messaging.
And
And
yes, we have also a clarification. She's worrying
okay.
about what others think.
Oh man, you can't do that. Man, they're going to think whatever they're going to think. Um, I will say the biggest, I think it was Wayne Dyer, like what other people think of me is none of my business. I love that so much. Now it's really hard as an entrepreneur because what they think of you is really important. But I had a really successful entrepreneur tell me, he was like, I allow the people that want to come to me, I attract them. And the people that don't want me or don't want my work, I'm not for them. I'm not for everybody. And so being true to your work and to what you know is important is a great way to build an audience and a following because you're so sure of what you do and you're not worried about what other people think. Um, I mean, obviously, we have to worry about what people think a little bit, but it's also good, I think, that you can't control what they're thinking about you. And sometimes I go to meetings, especially ADHD, we have a RSD, which is rejection sensitivity dysphoria, where if there's one little comment, we can spin out and think that somebody has said something negative about us. And really, it's you can't control what people think about you. You can control your own messaging as much as you can, but then it's out in the world, and you have to let it go. And then even if you make a mistake or you say something, um, you can always apologize for it or whatever you need to do to repair it, and then just let it go because it's done. And people are such little hamster brains anyway; they don't necessarily remember. So don't worry about it. Yeah, I'm looking at the comments too. Yeah. And I think it's talking to yourself and just saying it's okay. Like let it go. And we will beat ourselves up. We are the worst to ourselves. And so
Absolutely.
I mean just let it go. What are you gonna do? You know?
Yep. All right. I think we might have time for maybe one or two more questions. We might not get to all of them. Um, our next question is, how do you tell the difference between a real problem and something that just feels urgent?
Mm. There's a square. It's like I think it's called a chi-square or something, where you can actually divvy it out saying urgent and important or urgent and timely or something. Now I can't remember, of course, as soon as I mention it. It's like not important, but timely or urgent. Important. Oh God, I gotta write it down now. It's like
Is it
not
The
important.
Eisenhower matrix?
Yeah, something like that. It's
Yeah.
not important, but it's urgent, and then it's important, but not urgent, or it's important and urgent. You can kind of do that little square, and and that'll help you kind of tease out what's really important. I really highly, I mean, I have stacks of papers that I am like always writing notes on, and they're all over my house. Well, not all over. I have a few stacks going on, but I'm always writing stuff down, and so I can figure it out and parse it out, like what's really important. Urgent, important, urgent, not important, not urgent, important, not urgent, not important. Thank you, Laura.
Excellent. All right. I think we are headed toward the end of our time together today. I do want to thank you, Joy, for bringing all of this to us. I wanted to give Joy the opportunity to share link to her book and her work. So if you have your little phone there, you can grab that QR code. Joy, any last tips, words, encouragement, sending folks off into the night?
Yeah, I mean, I think just trust your instincts. Trust your own gut. Like I think as women we are told all the time how we should be feeling and thinking. And our book really talks about that a lot. Camille Anderson and I really had a wonderful time writing this book because we really talk about how do women support each other across our differences. And and how do we really have to advocate for ourselves first? And to the more that we do that, the easier it gets. And the more we model that, then the more other people will see that it's easier than we think. That it's actually a lot easier to just stand up for ourselves and have boundaries and patch that lifeboat.
Excellent. And Suzanne from our team dropped in links to Dr. Joy's site and also the link to her book. And we also have in the chat our networking registration and also more information about our Lioness membership. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us today. Have a great rest of your week. Stay warm, stay dry, all that good stuff. Stay happy. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Stay upright. There we go.
Stay upright.
Have a great rest of your week, folks. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.